The past decade has been a disillusioning time for conservatives and liberals. People on the right losing faith in Republicans during the Bush administration. Now people on the left unhappy with many of President Obama's policies. My next guest has been a fan of both presidents and then turned into a critic of both. Andrew Sullivan is one of the most influential bloggers on the planet. Andrew, welcome to Freedom Watch.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. One of the things that you and I have talked about on air and that we both have commented on in our professional work has been the slow disintegration of what it meant to be a conservative Republican in the past 20 years, under the George H.W. Bush years, under the George W. Bush years. What happened? How did Republicans, when they had the chance to run the Congress and the White House, get so far astray from the Barry Goldwater small government, maximum individual principles that they once held so dear?
Well, two words, really. Power corrupts, I think. And if you have the ability to borrow some people's money to give other people as a bribe, like the Medicare D entitlement, then the temptation is to give it away, to think that you'll get popularity from it, instead of sticking to your basic limited government principles. And then there's also the fact that, yeah, we had and found ourselves under attack under 9/11. But the key thing there is to fight back, but within what the Constitution allows, like the United States has done for 200 years. And throwing that Constitution out the window because you're terrified is not a proper conservative instinct, but it was the instinct that the Bush administration gave into.
You originally supported the war and took a lot of heat for it from a lot of your professional and social colleagues. You are British by birth, where the Constitution is more of an unwritten tradition handed down by Parliament and by judges. Were you scandalized when the Bush administration forced through the Patriot Act with little or no debate, which authorized federal agents to write their own search warrants, punished people for speech, and even attempted to lock people up because of their speech?
Yes, of course. And for me, the most really worrying argument was the theory that the president, now that we've defined ourselves at war, a war that will never end, according to many people, the president has inherent authority, regardless of the Constitution, regardless of the legislature, regardless of the judiciary, to have almost super dictatorial powers as long as he says that he's fighting the war on terror. So any citizen in those 8 years, or in those 7.5 years,
right,
whom he simply decided could be an enemy combatant without due process, could be jailed and tortured. Now that struck me as a pretty basic attack upon core individual liberties, even in a time of war, which is when they are, I understand, under stress, but where we should be even more vigilant to protect our freedom than we were before.
What is it that caused you to change your mind on the war? You were a strong and vocal supporter of it. You know there was no lawful declaration of war. You've just articulately criticized the authorization to use military force, which let George W. Bush and now lets Barack Obama, unless rescinded, will let all of their successors fight whoever they want. What about all that made you change your mind?
Well, first of all, the war in Iraq was based upon something that was untrue. And so I had trusted the government to tell me what it honestly knew about weapons of mass destruction, and there were none. And I actually believe that we should not preemptively invade other countries without really good evidence. I believed them, trusted them. I no longer believe or trust them or anything they say about this, unless I'm provided with good evidence, really good evidence, that isn't just because we said so that such a threat existed. I also came to the conclusion, a rather conservative one, that, you know what, my idealistic dreams that you can turn another country into paradise, into democracy overnight, was ridiculous, and I should have known better as a small C conservative. Iraq is Iraq. It will always be Iraq. Afghanistan is Afghanistan. The idea we can turn these countries into democracies at the force of a gun seems, to me, in retrospect, crazy. I guess my idealism.
Do you regret?
Sorry, my idealism got the better of me.
We only have about 30 seconds, Andrew. Do you regret your open and public support for the election of Barack Obama?
No, I don't actually, because I think he's still basically, I think, the least worst we've got. And also I believe that he's done his best to handle some pretty astonishingly difficult crises. I will hold his feet to the fire on controlling long-term debt and our deficits. He's had this debt commission. If he lives up to it, then I think he should sustain the support of fiscal conservatives.
His
But if he caters
policies
to
under the
Democratic
Patriot
left,
Act,
it's over.
his policies under the Patriot Act, his policies of spending more than George W. Bush are in fact even worse.
Well, look, the spending stuff, I think, in the last 2 years, given the profound recession, is more forgivable than adding spending when we were not in any recession.
All right.
And his health, yeah, that's my basic view. He's done a decent job, and I think that we should now actually, rather than throwing him out, hold him to the fire and get him with the Republicans to really reduce our long-term debt.
If he's thrown out, it'll be his own Democrats that throw him out. Andrew Sullivan, thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.